Childcare centres have been put on notice with the federal government set to introduce strict new laws targeting all operators this week.
Anthony Albanese has had a lot to say about the childcare sector, which, as we've all known recently, is in a state of crisis after some absolutely horrific allegations in Victoria and elsewhere around the country. Federal Politics editor Katina Curtis joins us still. Katina, what did the Prime Minister have to say about this issue?
Yeah, Ben, the PM said, that really that the regulators and politicians had let parents down. So that was quite strong comments from him. Jason Clare, who's the Education Minister, has said similar things as well, but that was the first time we'd heard that from the PM. And the childcare legislation is high on the agenda for this first sitting week. We're going to see some legislation to have tougher rules in place around making sure that childcare centres do meet those standards. That's going to come in on Thursday. So, the government really is placing this very high on its agenda.
And I guess, do you buy some of that rhetoric? Obviously, it's something that everybody wants to see resolved, wants to see improved. And so I think the government are completely honest about their desires in that regard. But this outrage that whether it's Anthony Albanese or Jason Clare express over the childcare crisis, it's been, 8 years since the Royal Commission into Institutional Child Abuse. There have been recommendations that the Albanese government could have implemented years ago and have not. They're part of the reason why governments have failed Australians.
Oh, absolutely. I think the stuff around the working with children checks that came out of that Royal Commission and the recommendations, to have a national system that the states can kind of, check if someone's moving from one jurisdiction to another. I think that absolutely should have been done years ago. Labor's been in government the past 3 years. Maybe it wasn't on the top of the Attorney General's list in the previous term. Maybe that's why they didn't act on it. The previous government didn't act on it either. I think in terms of the kind of broader childcare system, there's kind of bricks that have to be done before the system can be put right. They had to deal with the workforce crisis before you can do anything else, because it's no point promising every parent a place or promising free childcare if the workers aren't in the system. And then you've got to have the quality and safety standards on top of that. So they kind of spent the past 3 years sort of stabilizing things really in the system and dealing with some of that workforce shortage piece. We've seen the sort of extra pay going to childcare workers starting to fall into place over the past 6 months, but we're really only at the start of untangling what is actually a really complex, scrambled system. They can't really start from scratch on it, unfortunately. Otherwise, I think you'd end up with a really quite different childcare system than what we have at the moment. But that work is happening, but it's so slow and it's not satisfying parents because, maybe your kids are only in care for sort of 4 or 5 years, but it's got so complex and complicated, and different jurisdictions have different responsibilities that it's really slow to unpick it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, we often see in our roles when a horrific alleged incident like this happens, it does create an appetite for change with our decision makers and lawmakers. Do you anticipate that will happen here and that both sides of politics will come together and push through any reforms that improve the safety in childcare centres?
Yeah, absolutely. The coalition's already had one briefing on the legislation that's coming in this week, and they're expecting another one, I think, once it's sort of finalised tomorrow or on Wednesday. The Shadow Minister, John O'Junior, yesterday was indicating very much that they are on board. It's obviously they need to just see the final details, but they've pretty much said childcare is one of the areas that they will work with the government, particularly on child safety, to do whatever is needed to try and fix this problem.
Yeah, long overdue, but as long as it happens, I think that's the important thing. Federal Politics editor Katina Curtis, thanks as always for joining me on Newsworthy.
Thanks, Ben.